Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Codd, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show.
To everything else. I mean, you don't have to be in a specific industry. You can just think of the business in general as something that's either digital or not. So if you're doing something every day and you think about creating a digital twin of your job, of your process, that would help you make it, streamline this process and maybe repair it in some point. Doesn't really mean that we are moving to robots, but it's part of it. But it's not like I'm going to lose my job to a robot if I digitalize it. We don't need to think about it this way. The routine is going to be automated, but the creative piece of it is going to still stay. It's you who's going to decide how you do this job,
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Strength in the Numbers. Now you've just heard from today's guest, Tanya Kuznetsova, and Tanya's a rather special guest for us to have on the show because not only she's our first guest mentor from Russia, she's also our first guest with a significant background and career in Treasury. And Tanya helps us understand her journey and how she decided to get into Treasury as opposed to accounting and general finance, how she made the jump from railways to retail, and also shares the learnings she had from moving from Moscow in Russia all the way over to North Carolina in the US of A. I mean, during the conversation, what really jumps out to me about Tanya is her passion for digital business. She also goes through on the show where it's actually helped her in her work. She shares with us a very interesting idea of having a digital twin, and that will allow us to be better placed to remain relevant and enjoy our work even more. And we go on to talk about other things in the podcast as well, about how we can look for and stay ahead of business growth, particularly in the retail industry, how we can improve our success on international assignments, and go through a number, 3 or 4 areas there of what we can do. And also the biggest challenge she faced when moving to and began working in America, and it's not what you think it would be. So look, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, deconstructing these various areas with Tanya. You can check out our timestamp show notes, key quotes, resources, and ways to connect with Tanya and more at our website, SITNshow.com. And we always appreciate when you recommend the show to your friends and colleagues. They can subscribe on all the major platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. And as always, thank you for investing your time in the show today. So without further ado, over to Tanya and the show. So Tanya, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, it's a pleasure having you, Tanya, and I think our audience are really going to enjoy this one. So before we jump into sort of the podcast per se, do you mind maybe sharing us a brief history of your journey in accounting and finance, please?
Yes, absolutely. And again, thank you for having me. And I think you mentioned before that you don't have many Treasury professionals in your podcast, so I'm happy to be one of them. I think I joined the profession because my mom was a chief accountant. So I grew up looking at her and what she was doing. So I was really interested, but I didn't want to be the accountant. I wanted to do more in banking. And I think a big piece that contributed to it was that when I was in 10th grade, I visited World Bank once, which is not necessarily, like the classic banking. It's more about financing, bringing finance where it's needed and helping people. And I was really inspired by the idea. And that's how I got interested in financing and banking. So I majored in finance and credit. And I think that's pretty much how I got into Treasury and finance profession.
Okay, and just in terms of that journey then, because I completely missed the treasury angle myself. I sort of thought it'd be really cool to maybe work at an investment bank. Tried it. It's a lot of long hours, a lot of hard work. So I said, no, probably not for me. And then most people otherwise maybe slip into practice or go straight into industry. I mean, where do you sort of start in treasury? Do you start in accounting and then end up in treasury? How do you get into treasury per se?
I think it was more corporate finance and deal structuring. So I come from that part. I joined Russian Railways, which is a huge company, railways operator in Russia. It was back in 2004 when the markets only started to develop in Russia, and it was huge to, there were so many deals, mergers and acquisitions, and all kinds of like capital markets, financing, all that. So it was just big space, and I first joined there. And then moved to more corporate treasury, which is more cash management and liquidity management, and making sure the cash conversion cycle works smoothly. And it's usually in companies, usually separate divisions. So as I moved along to different roles, it was mostly in treasury and banking transactions, payments, all that. But yeah, I find that the biggest difference maybe between accounting and treasury is that Treasury is mostly focused on liquidity management and cash management and working capital.
I have to say, I take my hat off to Treasury. It's as much as we cover it in the accounting exams. A good Treasury specialist is worth so much to an organization, particularly from a liquidity perspective. Best hire I ever made was getting someone in who was a specialist in Treasury, and then he looked at our swaps and was able to find us an extra £1 million sterling a year just by changing the swaps around that no one else would have saw. I mean, like that's an amazing impact to make. So like Treasury, a key skill in a finance team. But I suppose you said you started out on the Russian railways, but then did you sort of end up in I mean, that must have been a massive scale. I mean,
that's true.
Yeah, it's just like it's just the geographic expanse and everything. I mean, like in terms of what was sort of your most sort of memorable experience being at the Russian railways?
Well, like I mentioned, it was a developing market, and they had a lot of investment programs and renewing the equipment and the trains and all that. So there's been a lot of financing involved, long-term financing involved, and structured financing, and they imported a lot. So that was a great experience in terms of structuring all those deals and working with banks in different countries, which was a very new experience for me, and it was a very new experience for many people back then. So yeah, that was just very exciting and new. I guess that was.
Yeah. Then I understood from sort of following your sort of career, you then sort of left Russia and headed stateside to America.
Well, before that was my Russian Railways role was at the beginning of my career. Then I moved to X5 Retail Group, which is the largest Russian retailer, food retailer, and they currently operate, I think, over 15,000 stores. And I've joined. It's a huge company, and I joined them back in 2017 when they only had 600 stores. So I worked there for 11 years. That's when the company moved from 600 stores to 13,000 stores, and it was so fast. It's actually mind-changing how, when the company grows so fast and you have to you don't want to catch up with it. You want to be ahead of the curve. So it really changes how you think about the business you're in. So yeah, that was unique experience.
I'm just sort of fascinated with these things because I've seen plenty of companies grow and then get caught out in a liquidity trap. They're growing companies. Sometimes they're actually profitable as well, but they just haven't got the cash to keep getting ahead of the growth or whatever. I mean, what sort of things can finance professionals and other treasury professionals look out for to try their best to at least stay ahead anyway of that sort of liquidity curve?
Yeah, I guess that's why Treasury was really strong and is. They have one of the strongest Treasury teams in the country. And that's exactly because, like you're saying, the liquidity gap is a serious thing, especially in retail. When you buy and sell, you don't really produce anything. So you always have to cover this gap. Yeah, financing, liquidity management is key there, and that's unique. Also, you get into this fast pace of things, and that's how I first got interested in technology and how systems can help finance professionals and what value it brings and how it helps you really in your day to day.
Okay, so is that sort of how you managed to at least that liquidity gap, or at least keep up? Is you started leveraging technology? Because I know you're passionate about digital business.
Exactly. First of all, because retail, and when you have so many stores and you have to manage all the amount of transactions, the amount of transactions was enormous. It was, I think, about 1 million invoices per month. Maybe that was the kind of the volumes that they have. And so, yeah, technology is key. It's like I can do nothing without it. And I will talk about this later, but that's how my current experience differs from before in terms of the scale of the business. But on the other hand, there are other things other than the volumes of the business that a professional needs to consider, and that's also comes with experience. So the main challenge in X5 was, I guess, the transaction volumes. And I was in charge of cash collections. And when you have retail stores, you don't really worry about collecting cash, like in terms of you don't have delayed payments or like anything like this because it's store. You get the cash right away. But on the other hand, you have to make sure this cash is not, doesn't reside in the store, but gets to a bank account. So that was the main challenge there. And so we managed to structure banking products even around this to make sure that our today's cash is in the bank by tomorrow 9 a.m. in the morning throughout the whole country. So, and there were some overdrafts involved in this, some debt, but we that was our goal, to have all money at our disposal 9 a.m. next day.
That's pretty phenomenal. I mean, I'm just wondering, Tanya, nowadays with everything going digital, I mean, is managing cash like in that traditional sense, making sure it's physically not in the store, in the bank, or whatever? Is that going to be a thing of the past, or I mean, what's going to happen there? Do you think?
Well, I think it's definitely not going to be the thing of the past because the cash is king. You have to know where it is. And it's the blood of the company.
Yes,
so I just think that it's just companies should get and will get more strategic around it maybe. So less companies will rest assured that they're fine as long as they have cash in their books, but they will move more towards having cash in their cash cycle working efficiently, if you will. So the more times you turn around, the better profit you get. So I guess that will be the next level of planning and I guess for the company. And that's where technology helps you really, because it helps you keep track of things. It helps you, move faster, sell faster. So.
Yeah, I'm sure technology's come a long way. I remember when I had my time in retail, which I spent a few years, and we used to get the POS reports back, the point of sale reports back. But the only problem was because there was so much data, and I just think the storage systems couldn't keep up, and technology couldn't keep up with the transactions. You'd be missing things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just like cash would go missing. Sales would go missing. So there's a lot of data. I mean, how do you decipher what's good and helps you in your sort of cash and treasury management cycle, and what's not? How do you know which data to go for and which technology to leverage?
Well, I guess, and this is an interesting question because I think, and I need to say here that none of my projects were just given to me. It's not like I was sitting in my role and someone will come in and say, hey, there's a great project. Why don't you do it and benefit from it? It's mostly that you would be looking what technology is out there. I think the person has to be interested in learning new things and learning what technology is out there. So I actually think that it's important to just know what's in the market. And then when you know it, you'll be able to apply, to see if it will be applicable to your business, if your company can benefit from it. It's just an ongoing process, and there's so many new things. So you have to just know what's out there and how you can use it. And even, I think the current trend is moving into simplifying things. If earlier only the largest companies were able to really afford, big technology and integrations, and it was so complicated, you had to have the whole IT department working with you hand in hand. It was really tough. But I think right now technology is moving and companies are moving into doing simpler ways, and even with treasury management systems, it's just something that I'm closer to. More mid-market companies implement treasury management systems where they can manage all their banks in one interface and do analytics, and it's just this is possible because it's just easier connect, and it's very easy implementation cycle, easy and short. So this is the key. The easier it gets for a company to implement, the more the adoption rate would be, I guess. And I haven't noticed that many technology companies, smaller fintech companies especially, They would even offer you like free trial periods, like they
Yeah.
do for, yeah, like they do for like customers, for people. People are pretty much used to first giving a thing a try, right? And then deciding whether to buy it or not. So why not take this approach with the company? They are the same people. They would like to try first and really see if it's working, if they're really benefiting from it, other than just going into these theoretical models and talking in front of investment committees and then implement it, and then it's not working. I've been there. I mean, it's painful.
Well, yeah, and it's like during that time, the problem you have is not getting solved. It's like
Yeah.
the time frame's extending, and it's just dragging on, and it's just like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, so yeah, I think that
Yeah,
resonates with a lot of our audience.
just give it another month, give it another
Yeah.
2 months, and then you never get there. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's
that's the problem
horrible.
with technology as well. It's if we follow, was it Moore's law, where he says, I think, is it technology's performance doubles every 18 months? Then what's that? Like 10 years, 5 years down the track, that's a 10x improvement in technology. So if we're
Mm-hmm.
not, the sooner we get on it, the sooner we're getting the benefit of that technology, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I like how they talk about digital transformation right now. To me, it's intersection of things, actually, because
Okay.
on one hand, you have digital, which really is like there is brick and mortar, there is digital. On the other hand, you have transformation, which is really a change of a form. It's just going from one form to another form. And when you put those two things together, now you're moving from, from one form into that you are in right now to a new digital form. And it's important to think about it this way, I think, because if you don't, you can apply it almost to everything, to your business processes even. There's this thing that's called digital twin. And I like this,
All right.
this name and this
Yeah,
concept.
I haven't heard that before. Well, what is that?
Yeah, well, it first started in manufacturing. They were thinking about like creating digital twins of some pieces, some processes in manufacturing. So they were just, creating more digital processes. But then it just right now it's shifting to everything else. I mean, you don't have to be in specific industry, you don't have to be specific like profession even. You can just think of the business in general of something that's either digital or not. So if you're doing something every day and you think about creating a digital twin of your job, of your process, that would help you make it, streamline this process and maybe repair it in some point.
Ah,
It
yeah.
doesn't really mean, it doesn't really mean that we are moving to robots, but it's part of it. But it's not like I'm going to lose my job to a robot if I digitalize it. We don't
No,
need to think
no,
about it this way. Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, it's just going to be more automated and more, and like the routine is going to be automated, but the creative piece of it is going to still stay. It's you who's going to decide how you do this job.
That's a really, oh no, that's why I really like the concept, Tanya. Like, I'm just sort of thinking something simple now. Like, I don't know, say we used to physically send a report out. How about now we have
Mm-hmm.
an automated process, Mac, whatever it wants to be called, where the data collection happens, the report is sense checked against some sort of checklist or total or whatever, make sure it's adding up properly, then get automatically sent out. Like that maybe could be some digital twin, but the thing is, yes, the digital twin is now doing a job maybe we used to do, but the person behind the creativity to figure out that process could have been turned into a digital process is actually quite valuable. It's that creative skill, it's developing that creative muscle that a lot of organizations are looking for, right? That sort of interaction of
Exactly.
creativity and tech.
And this person will now have time to think: is this report is really good? Is it really insightful? Do the people need it at all? Maybe we need to send them something else.
Well, that's a
Because
great
it's
point, actually.
evolving so fast. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
also,
that's a,
one more thing. Think about someone sending this report externally. Someone that sends some data, like, I don't know, invoices, outstanding report to a vendor or something like that. You can streamline your processes within the organization, but when something goes out, you never know what you're going to get back. So it's always like a piece that's not always automated. And that takes a lot of resources and a lot of, it's error prone. So this process is pretty complicated, exchanging with your external partners. But imagine if you get something back and you have a robotic process that will normalize this data, put it back into the format that you need, and fit it back into your system so that you will have this whole process streamlined and you won't have to worry about receiving fragments of data from your partner and then thinking like, how am I going to make sense of it? Again, you're saving so much time and effort, and you get really, and that's when you can analyze the insights, like what exactly is this information that you receive and how it can help you do your job. So that's basically the point.
No, because I think some of us are maybe guilty and maybe thinking too internally sometimes. That's a massive opportunity. It's just those edges of our organization where we're interacting with suppliers, vendors, or whatever. Just aligning the data flows between. I mean, I'm just thinking that there's massive opportunities there to get those aligned, and it just allows the vendor to focus on what's important to them, and also us to some time back to focus on. I think this digital twin idea we're suggesting creates a lot of scale. It's to focus on things that really matter.
People should focus on doing the business, right? Not on like exchanging reports. Exactly. And that's going back to Treasury. Maybe that's also one difference, because Treasury tends to work externally a lot with banks, with like vendors. And when you're analyzing your cash cycle and working capital, you're thinking about partners all the time. You're thinking about accounts receivables, accounts payables, and on each one of them you have an external partner. So in Treasury, when you do your forecasting, you have to be worried about like if this customer is going to pay on time. If not, your forecast is not going to be correct. So maybe that's why Treasury tends more, to worry more about communicating externally. That's a good thing because it's helping it just helps whole organization to work better. So I think we're all in the same team here. So.
I completely agree. I suppose now in terms of your recent journey, I think you're based out of North Carolina now as a director of Treasury.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, I made this transition to the US almost 2 years ago now. It's been really different, and I really appreciate this experience because it just opens up more, just allows broader views on many things. Moving from country to country is a very different experience, and I never thought it would be that different, frankly speaking, because I went to school in the US before, I lived here before, so it's not like it was totally new. But in terms of, in professional terms, I, frankly speaking, thought it's not going to be so different, but in a good way. I think I gained so much more skills here, just also different perspective on this. And so I really appreciate this. And in general, I would recommend to learn just as much different experiences as you can reach to. And part of this is also talking to different people. And like we discussed with you, Andrea, before, even things like your podcast would help here a lot, because when you listen to different people's experiences and different points of view, it just gives you so much in terms of understanding how things work, how different things are, how different all people are. And it's important for a professional to be open to this.
Yeah, I know it seems a bit of a strange thing for me to say. I didn't do that thing early enough in terms of talking to others and just absorbing those other stories out there and what people were learning. And I know I do support now that I've seen the error in my earlier ways. I think international exposure, it's very key. And in terms of the process you were just sort of sounding out there, you said you go talk to other people. I mean, how do you know an international move is right for you or something that's worth considering? I mean, what sort of steps could our audience perhaps follow?
Well, I personally find professional associations very helpful. I think just by networking within a professional association gives you a lot. And even in my days back in Russia, I already joined the Association for Financial Professionals, which is based in the US. They're really international. They have members from different countries, but mostly US based. And they offer this Treasury certification, which is CTP, Certified Treasury Professional. So that's what I also did back in a few years ago. And that was really helpful to get more international exposure, and then networking with other professionals, going to conferences, just talking to people. I guess that's the most helpful. And within one organization, we live in times where many organizations are truly international, and they encourage people to move between different offices and sometimes even different countries. I know banks often do that, but I also see companies do this more often just for the sake of, growing the talent and and just helping people grow professionally.
Yeah, I think that was a nice summary in terms of the things our audience could do that actually do practically work, and I thought they were summarized well by CFO I was speaking with earlier. I think from a talent perspective, mobility was key. To him, and I'm not saying I don't want to frighten our audience off saying everyone should be moving internationally or whatever. Like sometimes the circumstances might mean that that's a bit more of a challenge.
Yeah.
But you can still collaborate internationally and develop a network that's within everyone's reach, and appreciate where other people are coming from. But those that I've seen effectively have good moves that have worked for them is where they've done that sort of networking, spoken to others, and had sort of informal sponsors and formal sponsors as well to get them to come over. Like in terms of actually, I think if you're applying for a job and you're sort of not a known entity to that person you're applying for the job for or with, I suppose it's probably more difficult than if you've sort of built a relationship and people are aware of what you can offer as well. And that only comes from talking to others and having conversations and figuring out, where you're the best fit. So I thought that was great advice, Tanya. So fantastic for that. And I suppose, in terms of, it was a heck of a distance you moved, many thousands of miles, kilometers. I mean, I'm glad this worked out, but I suppose what was the biggest challenge for you, having moved over to America? What was the biggest challenge?
Like I mentioned, the biggest challenge was not what I expected, really. Because I thought that people are going to be really different. For some reason, I thought that even day to day being in an office, would be different for some reason. I thought it's the pace of things is going to be different. Conversations between people are going to be different. But that didn't happen. It was so familiar. And I guess when you're in the corporate world, it's all very similar. I guess that's the reason. So it was so similar, and I just flew right in. I mean, it had no difficulties at all. But on the other hand, my biggest challenge was moving from the largest business to the middle-sized market company, and it was very different because of how things are done, and how the level of automation of processes contribute to this as well. And also, I think the omni-channel model of my company that I work in right now, it's very different because I used to work in retail, and it's basically a one-channel thing. And you just, it's very straightforward. But here, when many companies go this path right now, which is, I think, a good thing to do, just selling omni-channel and finding new, ways to reach the customer. This implies challenges, first of all, to Treasury, I think, because you have to serve all these different ways of payments and channels, and it just may not seem obvious, but when you plug in a new website and start accepting payments there, Treasury has to worry about this, get this running, So even simple things like that you have to worry about. So that was the biggest challenge. So many different options of inflows of money, outflows of money is just the whole new universe for me. But it was a great experience, and learning all this was really helpful to me, I think. So it's been great so far. And also, I found that in smaller companies, they tend to blend roles a lot. So I now have more accounting responsibilities that I had before. And it's also gives you a new perspective on looking at things, and again, collaborate more and work cross-functionally, even closer with other departments. So
that's a really awesome insight. So thanks to share thanks to share that. Although you made me smile about the offices not being the not being as different. Yeah, I can tell you one story about this. My first or second day in this new office, I was introduced to one of the directors there, and we were sitting in his office, and he was telling me this story. The other day, he said, I left my office for a few minutes. When I came back, there was a meeting in my office, and I wasn't even invited to it. I didn't know what was going on, but when I just came back, and there were all those people sitting there and talking, and then someone said, "Oh, I think we forgot to send you the invitation." So that was really funny. But when he was telling this story,
I remember the exact same one from my previous office. Was the exact same thing happened there, you know. And that's when I understood that all people are the same and all situations are the same.
Yeah, no, and even if it's not, it's like even if people think it's not the same, there's going to be some sort of I know merging of certain things
Hmm.
like that. You know, for me, the big one was coffee. Like working in the States, a lot of people are bringing coffee to work, whereas like in
Yeah,
Ireland, it wasn't really a thing. But then over time, I've noticed a lot more people now bringing coffee to work. We've a lot more coffee shops, Starbucks and whatever's growing here as
yeah,
well, and it's just interesting. I mean, like obviously we've our local, how do you say, diversity to bring in, and you know that's going to create value, but also the things are sort of are meshing a bit as well between companies in different parts of the world. So it's interesting observation you raised, Tanya. That's very interesting, and I suppose just stepping it up a bit. You know, like you've been giving us a lot of great advice there, great stories. I mean, what's been the best bit of advice you've ever received?
I think I was once told that no one can really define who you are, and I really agree with
Mm.
this. So you have to be the one who defines yourself, and not the circumstances you're in, not the company you're working in right now, not even your current role if you're not happy with this. It doesn't define you as a
Yeah.
professional, as a as a person. And you can, if you want to be something more maybe than you currently are, you can grow into this. And it's not like, it's always a learning curve. It's always a path. It's never is like an end stop at any
Yeah,
point.
that no, that's very powerful advice. I think a lot of people, and again, I'm going to be straight about this. I think they don't appreciate that bit of the advice enough, Tanya. You know, I feel if you ask people to sort of rate themselves on a like in terms of how much are they contributing on a 0 to 10 scale, they'll
Mm-hmm.
never give themselves a 10, right? But if you split your role,
Uh,
because I think it's being influenced by a role, and they define
mm-hmm.
by their role. They never separate their identity from their role. So, like most of us should score a 9 and a 10 on identity, we should really know ourselves. And our role is separate. So, like, if we're not performing sometimes in the role, it doesn't take away from who we really are. And again, that's the thing, a big thing in technology, with roles changing and so on, we shouldn't let that define us. So I thought your advice was really powerful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. You have to, you have to, you can be your own author of your story. So
Yeah,
you
completely.
should be. Yeah.
And he should be. So, speaking of author, right? And I normally ask like for recommended resources. All right, you did write a book, and actually not your straightforward finance textbook style
Guilty.
either. So do you mind sort of sharing that with our audience, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for asking. Yes, I did write a book. It's called Alice in the Treasury Island, which is a reference to Treasury space and working in this field. And it's written in the mix of genres. It's on one hand is a like business growth and professional growth coaching book, and on the other hand, it has elements of science fiction. There is a story, and the story is happening like way in the future with some person who is in finance. So yeah, that's kind of interesting, I guess, approach to this. But that was the main reason I did this was to share my experiences and to inspire maybe younger professionals to grow, to find the purpose, to find motivation to work, to just keep moving forward. Not because so many younger professionals, when they find something, when they start feeling comfortable in what they're doing,
Hmm.
some people tend to think, okay, professional in this, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, kind of thing. But then they get bored in a couple of years, and they just get lost. They don't know how to move forward. The work is not so fulfilling anymore, but they don't understand why. So my answer to this would be just keep moving forward, keep learning and new things, and just develop, in your profession.
Yeah, I mean that I know, and I think we all know people who've gone through those challenges, Tanya, and delighted you wrote that book. I just had an image in my head. It's like in Ireland and the UK, what tends to happen when people hit that point, they tend to go and buy a convertible car. And,
Okay.
and then we know there needs to be an intervention. so so now we can point them in the direction of your book and recommend that to them
That's
as well. But I suppose in terms of that's a great. I mean, look, thanks for doing it. And again, it sounds a really novel way of doing it. Bit of science fiction, bit of personal, professional growth in there. So any
yeah.
any other useful books or resources you recommend our audience go check out?
Well, I would recommend, just because I read it again not so long ago. There's a great book by Chris Voss. It's called Never Split the Difference.
Yeah,
And I don't. Have you read it? I think it's like a great advice on negotiating. And I personally took this advice and actually tried a few of the like insights of how to negotiate things, and it really worked. So I can testify.
It's just I know why he was like, was he something like an FBI hostage negotiator or something like that? But it's just like and it wouldn't work in finance, you think, but no, it actually does. I mean, for me, the big thing was no. It was like the usefulness of no. It's a great clarifier of boundaries. It's just like, and like people are saying, oh, you shouldn't use no or but anymore, but sometimes you can actually do use it to good effect. It's just like, it's a useful tool that accountants used to use a lot, and we should still at least examine whether or not we should use it. Don't say no ever. Just you don't have to always say
Absolutely.
yes, but so it's very
I
good.
like his. Yeah, I really appreciate his perspective when he says anything is a start of the conversation. No is also a start for the conversation. It's like maybe, or I don't know, is like it's worse than yes or no.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Lack of an opinion is not good for you.
And yes, and accountants and finance professionals, we have an opinion, so you understand. It's okay to have an opinion. So no, that's great. No, so that's a great resource. So thanks for that, Tanya. And I suppose, look, should our audience wish to continue the conversation, where's the best place to connect with you at?
Well, always good place to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm willing to give the link to my website as well, where my book can be found if it is free for download. So if anyone is interested, I'll be happy to do that. So I'm open to all kinds of conversations, and I enjoy professional conversations always.
Excellent. That makes two of us. So it's been a great conversation.
Exactly.
So as part of wrapping up, we do have to bring all good things to an end sometimes. So, but no, in terms of wrapping it up. Look, I just loved the conversation. It went in a number of different directions. The digital business as well. Also, the international experience, getting to know people, building networks. And the opportunities then from the digital twin, internal versus external. Great suggestions. Would you happen to have any maybe parting thoughts for our audience?
I think that it's important for anyone to, as we mentioned already, to always keep developing, learning, moving forward. And even with, like, you often talk about, like many people often talk about which skills are more important than the others for some professions. I just think in general, a person needs to define this for himself. Like something he's more interested in doing will be great for him. He'll be better in this. And definitely. If developing your strengths, that would be always more fulfilling than, even maybe sometimes working on your weaknesses. Just if you have any, just, work with it, but don't get too obsessed over it. Work with your strengths.
That's a great parting thought, because it resonates with the Strength in the Numbers show. It's really about focusing on our strengths, not losing sight of those. There is a lot of change out there with digital, but actually, we still have our strengths. And fantastic advice, Tanya. And thanks for being such a great guest and coming on the show today.
Thank you so much. It was really enjoyable. Thanks a lot.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter, which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding, and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities, and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.